Donald Trump is wrapping up his China visit with some high decibel praise for his host, President Xi Jinping, describing him as a very special man and thanking him for his hospitality in several tweets. But the references to North Korea were blunt and unmistakable.
Responsible nations must join together to stop arming and financing and even trading with the murderous North Korean regime. Together we have in our power to finally liberate this region and the world from this very serious nuclear menace. But it will require collective action, collective strength, and collective devotion to winning the peace.
China's responsibilities on that score.
The States is committed to the complete and permanent denuclearization of North Korea. So important. China can fix this problem easily and quickly. And I am calling on China and your great president to hopefully work on it very hard. I know one thing about your president. If he works on it hard, it will happen. There's no doubt about it. They know.
That's Donald Trump for you. China, fix it. His Chinese counterpart was more restrained and underscored the responsibilities of both the countries.
朝鲜半岛核问题，我们重申坚定致力于实现半岛无核化，维护国际核不扩散体系。双方将继续全面严格执行联合国安理会各项决议。 同时致力于通过对话谈判解决半岛核问题。
There was no word from Trump on Xi's demand for recognition of China's great power status. But the Chinese agency Xinhua said Trump acknowledged the one China policy, meaning that the island of Taiwan is a part of China. But the US has always opposed any move by China to forcibly reunite the island. Some $250 billion in business deals were signed, but it's not clear whether these are all new. Trump took the opportunity to deliver a backhanded compliment on China's trade practices.
Right now, unfortunately, it is a very one-sided and unfair one. But I don't blame China. After all, who can blame a country for being able to take advantage of another country for the benefit of its citizens? I give China great credit. But in actuality, I do blame past administrations for allowing this out-of-control trade deficit to take place and to grow.
中国开放的大门不会关闭，只会越开越大。 我们将按照中共19大作出的战略部署，推动形成全面开放的新格局。包括美国企业在内的外资企业在华投资经营环境，也将更加开放、更加透明、更加规范。
Xi's statement does not accord with what he said at the 19th Party Congress, where it was clear he favoured the state's continuing hold over the economy. Let's go straight to our guest, David Kelly, Research Director at China Policy, with us from Beijing. Stephen Golub, International Affairs Expert, with us from California. Good evening to both of you. Stephen, Trump actually blamed America for the trade deficit. Did you see that coming?
Well, it's somewhat, to be honest, I didn't quite see it coming in terms of the way he often frames things. However, he usually does seek someone to blame. He was on foreign soil, so didn't blame China. So while I didn't see it coming, it's not surprising. Look, there were two things Donald Trump wanted from this trip: concrete progress regarding North Korea and concrete progress regarding the structural aspects of the U.S. trade deficit with China. He didn't get either. He got another thing he really prizes: lots of pomp and circumstance and flattery, but not much else in a really concrete way beyond that.
So would it be fair to say that she flattered Trump and ensured that none of the sticking points were raised, or was Trump being a good guest and is probably going to revert to calling names once he's away from China?
That's a good question. I think the answer is both, that there was a lot of flattery involved that Trump really appreciated, but once he's away from foreign soil and once it becomes clear that China is not moving forward in either of these regards, assuming it doesn't move forward on North Korea, which is not likely, but it's still conceivable it might come around, then he may well revert to harsher rhetoric. Remember, last year on the campaign trail, Donald Trump accused China of raping the U.S. economically, a historically great theft of jobs from the U.S. Whether he'll quite use that language again, I don't know, but he may revert to some very harsh language once these actions on China's part don't come through. Interestingly,
he also bowed to Chinese insistence to not allow reporters questions. Very interesting turn of events. David, the $250 billion in trade deals being described as more talk, less substance. Is that how you see it too?
Yes, I would say that that will not turn the situation around. It's very announceable, and Trump needed these announceables. And in the run-up to the meeting, the Chinese media were basically saying, we're going to make this a more impressive than Trump's reception in Tokyo and Seoul. And that was the editorial yesterday. And that, I think, was probably easy enough to do. Beijing is a kind of a gobsmacking place to visit for the first time. And there was lots of sticking to the script. I think Trump stuck to the script, and he can tell his base back home in the eastern states that he got something from the deal, and they won't necessarily question it.
Also, how do the Chinese see the American president, David? Do they believe that Xi Jinping is dealing with a man from a position of strength? They
accept that he's the guy who holds the nuclear keys that we've heard so much about, it's a saying in the Chinese media at the moment that nothing talks like power. So they know that he has power. On the other hand, in the run-up to this meeting, they described him as a transactional person, somebody who is going to want to deal and will have various options on the table and will look for a winning combination of his own. And he will no doubt report that happened. He will say this was the greatest deal ever made.
A very interesting soundbite, Stephen, on North Korea. He says if Xi Jinping really puts his mind to it, he can fix it.
Yeah, it's a great soundbite. Trump already tweeted months ago that President Xi had tried, but unfortunately had failed. So it's flawed in that analysis, if you could call it that, on Trump's part, is flawed in two respects. First, whether China really can squeeze North Korea to the extent that it would force North Korea to drop its nuclear weapons, which North Korea views as absolutely essential to its survival. And second, perhaps even more serious, whether China really wants to do it, whether it sees doing it as in its own national interest. So in those two regards, I think expecting really hardline action from China against North Korea is a false assumption, and especially whether President Xi will move ahead with anything like this.
David, would it be fair to say that this trip has been more successful from Beijing's point of view? They rolled out the red carpet and had pretty much everything their way.
Yes, that's all true. And the previous commentator said, I certainly go along with that. But there is something new this time. And that is, in the recent months, Beijing has hinted that it cannot accept the situation very much longer. The situation is now extremely insecure for Beijing. And moreover, Xi Jinping cannot treat it with his usual tools. He cannot claim that he is handling this using the China solution or China wisdom or China model. It's plain old-fashioned diplomacy. And for them to even discuss the contingency of some kind of strike action, whether they deny it, if they say it's not practical, even to discuss it, is a change in the atmosphere.
Stephen, how does the American media, and I know American media is not a monolith, they're deeply divided over Donald Trump, their president, but how do they see this visit? What, according to the headlines, is the highlight of his China trip?
Well, I think your other guest got at it to some extent in terms of these deals, which have been a primary focus. These financial deals really being more they're being more smoke than light there. What are promised is $250 billion of new contracts are either pre-existing deals, memos of understanding that won't translate into real deals, or predictions of great economic benefits that will end up into translating to far lower economic value if the deals go through it all. So there's a lot of skepticism on the part of informed economic journalists on the value of these supposedly great financial transactions that Trump has been bragging about.